Hi, welcome back to the workshop for episode 35 of the Rickenbacker 620 12 string build. And in this episode we're going to be tackling a couple of little jobs that need doing before we can get on to the finishing process. But before I do that, I actually want to kind of take a little bit of time and finish off a few little rough edges that are existing on the guitar, because there's quite a few little bits and pieces on the guitar that have been left unfinished. And this is a result basically of doing this on YouTube. Because normally what happens is I'll do a certain amount of work on the build and then realise I'm leaving myself short a little bit on time to actually get the video produced. So I'll scuttle off into the house and I'll start editing the video and doing all the other associated work to get that done. And then before you know it, I've got to get the next episode out, so I have to crack on with the next little bit. And the result of that is you get all sorts of little bits and pieces that aren't getting done on the build, and at some point you have to do them. In this instance, it's actually quite a lot of sanding. So I've just taken a little bit of time over the last couple of days to go over the build and get myself caught up basically on all of those little bits and pieces. But I'm pretty much caught up now, and I have to say the guitar is looking a lot better for it. And in terms of what I want to achieve in this episode, we need to fit and position the bridge, because we haven't done that yet. But I think that's going to be fairly straightforward. From what I can see on the plan, it just fits at a certain position, perpendicular to the centre line, and it's just screwed in place. So hopefully that won't be too complicated. Of course, we have to check that it's in the right position for intonation and everything, but I'm quite confident that should be okay. And then at the other end, on the headstock, it has been pointed out to me by a couple of people that Rickenbackers actually have some kind of relief in these slots where the strings go in for the secondary set of tuners, because sometimes the strings will foul on there. So we need to set up something that's going to replicate a nut and then get a couple of strings on. It only really affects two of the strings that go into these tuners here, so we don't need to go too mad with stringing it up or anything. And then we'll just see how much material we might need to relieve from here, just to make that work a little bit better. I don't think it's going to be a big job. I think it's just a case of kind of cleaning some of that material out with a file until we can get a straight run with the strings. But to do that, we're going to have to assemble a few more components onto the guitar. And I think the first thing I'll deal with is to get this bridge put into position. Now I've checked on the drawing and it's saying that from the nut position I should be about 626mm to the center line of this bridge. There is actually a fair amount of adjustment on here, so I don't think I have to be absolutely spot on with this. What I tend to do with these is if I position the high E saddle just slightly further forward than the center point of its adjustment, and then position that exactly at the scale length, that will usually give me enough adjustment backwards and forwards to get the rest of the strings into intonation. Unlike a Les Paul or something with a tune-o-matic bridge, where once you put those studs in, you're kind of set and there's nothing you can do about it. This is only actually held in place by two tiny little screws. So theoretically, if I get this wrong, I can take that off, I can reposition it, I can re-drill, and visually you're not going to know that it's been done. Obviously that's not ideal, but I'm pretty confident we can get this sorted first go. What I do need to check though is which way this bridge is oriented, whether the screws go to the back or to the front. So I'll go and check that now and we can get fitting. Okay, thank God for the internet. I've just done a very quick check and the screws do go to the rear, which always makes a lot more sense to me. I don't know why Tune-o-matic bridges have them at the front, because that just makes it really awkward in my opinion. So now it's just a case of getting a rule fastened onto the guitar in the appropriate position and doing some measuring. And to set this out, what I need to do is I need to measure those holes. So that's giving me 50 millimeters between the inside faces of these holes, but of course that's not the measurement we want. So to get the accurate measurement, we need to find out how big those holes are. Look, about 3.5 mil. No, not quite, a little bit too big. So 3 mil drill bit is a little bit loose in there, but it's close enough for rock and roll. So we add the 3 millimeters onto the 50 that we've got. So that's 53 mil. We'll halve that, gives us 26.5. So then I will set up my dividers on a rule to that measurement. And the way I always do this, because obviously we can't get a measurement from the end of there, so I'll go from the 100 mil mark and I'm going to set these up. It's 26.5, so that'll be 126.5 millimeters. Like that. And then I'll just step out these measurements with my dividers. Drill a couple of holes and we can get this thing screwed on. And that's another thing I've only just noticed about this bridge setup, is that these screw holes are actually slotted. So that gives you another few millimeters of play. So if you do find that the bridge is slightly in the wrong position, you can move it to accommodate. I'm going to push this right the way forward though, for the purposes of this setup. Just a very quick visual check. That is pretty much where we need it to be. So happy days. So next up, we need to find something that we can fashion into a makeshift nut and see how much work we need to do to get these string slots to fit properly. And to do that, I've just got this little bit of an offcut of rosewood. It's probably part of this fingerboard. And I'm using this for a couple of reasons. One, it's hard enough to not let the strings dig into it too much. And secondly, it's quite oily wood, so I can temporarily super glue that to the fingerboard, safe in the knowledge that it's going to come off again without causing any damage. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my trusty half pencil and mark that up. And I'm going to sand down right to that line, which technically speaking would be too low, but in this instance too low is better than too high, because that means I'll actually be putting a bit more clearance in there than I need, which is way, way better than not enough. Okay, to the sander. Well, I was actually really pleased with the way that they strung up. They used kind of setup strings, so they're all kinky at the end, but managed to get them through the tuners okay and get them wound on a lot easier than I thought I would. So that's a bonus. So I'll take them off again, and I think it's just really a case of just putting an ever such a slight chamfer onto the ends of these, just to create a little bit of clearance for them. Okay, so there's those two little bits relieved. I had to do one a lot more than the other, but if I test it with a straight edge, we are kind of away from touching there now, which is what we were after. They do still need a little bit of cleaning up work to do, but as I mentioned earlier on in the video, I haven't got time to do that now because I need to run into the house and start editing. But I will do it off camera and it'll be ready to go when we come back for the next episode, which will be starting the preparation for the finishing, so we can get this thing a little bit further on towards completed. So as always, like if you've liked, subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I'll look forward to seeing you then. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.